Todd, it's an unscientific survey. I'm trying to find someone in small business who benefits or enjoys or is enthusiastic about the Affordable Care Act. Why is that?
Well, I think, it's 80% of our members tell us that they don't understand how it's going to affect them. It's not that they don't understand the basic framework of the law. They understand there'll be these exchanges. They understand the individual mandate. They understand that there'll be subsidies for individuals to buy. What they don't really understand is what the whole marketplace will look like in 2 or 3 or 4 years. Will they be more likely to have to offer coverage to their employees? Less likely? What's that coverage going to look like? And what will be their responsibilities as an employer? That's the part where they don't really know what that's going to look like. And that's valid because the market has to develop.
David Malpass is our guest host from Encima Global. You come at this from an economist standpoint, also focused very much on the politics of it. What is your assessment on the impact of the health care law on small business?
Small businesses haven't been hiring, and part of that is the concerns about healthcare and how much it's going to cost. So I think from the standpoint of the economy, the dramatic thing that we've seen really over the last 5 years is the lack of growth in new businesses, lack of business formation, and in small businesses. That shows up in the ADP surveys, that shows up in the number of workers that are part-time versus full-time. So this is a big problem for the economy because it's used to getting dynamism out of small businesses hiring, and that's just not happening right now.
Well, Todd McCracken, is that what you hear from your members?
I think there is something to that. I think there is a potential silver lining. I'll say one positive thing about Obamacare, and that is one of the reasons that people don't go out and start new businesses. There are many right now, but one of them has traditionally been the health care insecurity, that they are concerned enough about their inability to get health care as a new startup. That they might stay working for a large firm where they do have coverage. If Obamacare is able to convince people they're going to have a safety net, that might help free up some of those people to go out and start companies.
I believe, Todd, there's a 50-employee break. Do you see a lot of small businesses, they've got 100, 200, 300 employees, and they're trying to get under the 50-employee limit?
I don't see companies that are that large trying to get under the 50-employee limit, but certainly those that are on the cusp. It's a significant barrier if you're right at that 50 employees. So it's worthwhile to try to take some steps if you're very close to it. But I would also say that if you're close to it, the complexity of figuring out if you're at the 50 employee cusp, because it's much more complex than the typical citizen might guess to even figure out whether it applies to you or not.
Go ahead, David.
That's a real problem.
The ADP data yesterday was remarkable in that middle-sized companies, that's from 50 employees to 250, actually cut workers, which very rarely happens. So it was an anomalous piece of data, or maybe it's this point that he's making. They're holding down their hiring because they are in that middle range above 50.
Perhaps that might be an inflection point. Todd, I want to ask about debt levels, because the percent of small businesses carrying debt has now approached 90%, and the average amount of debt that they have more than $800,000 as well. We are in an era of low interest rates. Does that help or hurt small businesses, and what kind of financial state does it leave them in to deal with the new expenses from the Affordable Care Act?
Well, I think it's actually a good sign. I mean, because companies, generally speaking, take on debt when they're trying to grow, when they see an opportunity and they need to add equipment, staff, office space, inventory. So having working capital and being somewhat in debt is actually a good sign for a lot of growing companies.
Todd, very quickly here, I just want to ask you, while we have the politics at play and the fourth day of the government shutdown, do you support the hardline Republican position initially to defund Obamacare or else shut down the government?
We think Obamacare needs to be dealt with, but we don't think that having a government shutdown right now makes a great deal of sense. It hurts a lot of companies, and it has the real potential to stall the economy.